Adventurers are essentially more or less elite forces, operating in small groups to take out monstrous threats, traveling to new fantastic and oftentimes dangerous places practically comes with the job. But there's one question that gets seldomly addressed: what do adventurers eat? But before we take a closer look at the question, I should also remind everyone how much they are going to eat. See, while in modern times, with many jobs requiring the one hired only to sit in front of a computer or behind a wheel and operate a PC or car, our own ample amount of available calories meets a mostly sedentary lifestyle with little to no bodily activity. But adventurers would need to carry their combat gear, so armor and weapons, other stuff like tents and sleeping bags, as well as some form of food with them. So just the act of traveling to another location would most of the time be very hunger-inducing all in and of itself. Hence why most adventurers, at least in my opinion, would prefer it to simply hunt and forage for food on their way to the target, or whenever possible, hit the inns and taverns on the road, instead of breaking into their food rations that might be needed for locations with less than ample food supply, a cave, an empty castle, or a dungeon for example. As for what kind of food they would try to acquire, it would mainly depend on what kind of environment they would find themselves into. If the adventurers are tasked with going up a mountain, a week's travel away in order to take out some goblins, they would of course eat one big meal before going out, taking their doggy bags with them as to cover for the first day of food. Then they could hunt game, try to fish fish from a stream they follow, harvest berries or just eat roots and other edible plant material, if they have to before getting close to the goblin threat. But as soon as they would find a hot trail, they would likely stop relying on nature's bounty, since even if there's ample amount of food, they would not know whether or not goblins would have tampered with it or poisoned it, since the goblins might look to ward off not necessarily only adventurers, but rival goblin warbands, as well as perhaps orcs or other humanoids that could be dangerous for them. And with that said, we come to what kind of food the adventurers would carry with them, and how they would carry it. And we will start with the water supply. First and foremost, instead of having glass bottles, they will likely have way more resilient materials if they carry bottles with them. And if there are monstrous beings from which the equivalent of plastic bottles could be harvested, it would be of course be an option to buy such bottles and to fill and refill them whenever they could, but normally other materials far more widely available than, let's say, a wyvern's or a dragon's chemical sac would be used for such endeavors, such as leather, which was how in medieval and in antiquity times wine was transported. Water might also be that one area where magic casters could still help to acquire it, even in an otherwise hostile environment. For example, at sea, the earth magic caster could extract the salt from the water in order to create fresh water. The water mage could do the same, but just differently, and extract the pure water from the salt in it. And the fire mage would just boil it on a flame of its own making, and the ice mage would be able to condense it right away. Though the last way of making fresh water might require some additional bottles and funnels to make it work. As for food, anything that can sit a couple of weeks in a pantry without starting to live again would do the job. Bread would be commonly used, all sorts of smoked and cured meat would be a welcome source of protein and calories as well. Apples come with a natural layer of protection, the same goes from basically everything from watermelons to coconuts to just regular nuts. Carrots or pineapples, roots or honey, sausages, cheese, unground grain, and of course any fantasy meat, vegetables or fruit that is quite hardy and that doesn't spoil easily. But generally speaking, instead of carrying one big fruit, like again a watermelon with them, the adventurers would normally want to have many smaller things, like seeds or chestnuts, because if one watermelon gets mishandled or breaks or just a bit too much sunlight and starts to spoil, a much larger amount of food will be wasted than if someone sits on its chestnuts and therefore accidentally opens it. Resilience would also therefore be a vital criteria for any food. If adventurers need to be able to stomach a hit, their food needs to do it as well, which most of the food items I just listed would be able to do. In addition to all of this, the adventurers would also carry anything they need to prepare food, so knives for carving and cutting freshly hunted game, flintstones for making fire, or a fire mage if they have one, a bucket for carrying water, a pot and cutleries as well. Alcohol would also probably be part of the equipment, but not so much as to drink it, but rather to sterilize things with it, if things like germ fury or indeed germs exist in the fantasy world. As for how adventurers would know what kind of new foods, new berries or leaves might be edible, they would essentially have to go through the same process as we did. Someone has to rub a very small amount of the fruit, vegetable or leafy green on their skin and just look what happens. If there are no rashes or allergic reactions, then a very small amount can be taken into the mouth and chewed. If it is bitter, then it won't be eaten. But even if not, it will be spat out once again. And then the adventure party will just look what happens. And if everything is okay, and if the food is even tasty and somewhat delicious, next time the small amount will be swallowed. If this turns out to be okay, a slightly larger amount will be ingested. And that's how on, for example, a remote island or misty jungles, adventurers would find new food sources. Of course, this process isn't perfect. Anything poisonous but with a long time to take an actual effect might be able to cause some harm. But generally, this process is better than starving. But it will likely be employed only in emergency situations, as any unknown food always carries a certain risk for poisoning or indeed death. And that's pretty much what adventurers would eat. As for how they would eat it and how they would cook their meals, open fires for cooking would be a necessary part of adventurers' lives. But as soon as enemies could be close, no open fires would be started, and the food will be eaten as fast as possible, and the adventurers would likely learn to either thoroughly clean themselves afterwards or employ strong-smelling herbs as to mask the food smell, as to avoid predators who might be drawn to the food. And while a bear might be able to smell what is inside of canned food, due to the small trace amounts of food outside of it that came onto the outside of the canned food in the process of making it, a strongly smelling herb might just be able to cover it. And the same goes for just normal food in a medieval world. And generally speaking, anything that covers smells or would signal danger to the surrounding wildlife would be employed by adventurers as a common consumable. And with that said, next time we will take a look at what would eat adventurers again. And now it's your turn. What are your thoughts about food rations and supplies for adventurers in a realistic fantasy world? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.